Long before books, paper, or even cities as we know them, people were already trying to leave something behind. In what is now southern Iraq, pieces of clay still rest quietly beneath the sand. Thousands of years ago, the Sumerians shaped these tablets by hand and pressed simple marks into them, creating the world's first written words. They weren't just recording facts, they were sharing ideas, beliefs, and experiences. What these tablets tell us feels surprisingly close, even after all this time. Once you hear their story, it doesn't fade easily. It stays with you, like a voice from the distant past still trying to be heard. They're about beings called the Anunnaki. Powerful beings who didn't just rule over early humans, they controlled how many of them there could be. Long before anyone counted populations or tracked birth rates, these old texts hint at something strange. They suggest that the number of humans on Earth wasn't allowed to grow freely. It was watched, limited. And when there got to be too many people, something was done about it. The Anunnaki, according to these ancient records, decided how many humans should exist. What if our population wasn't meant to grow naturally? What if someone was managing it? Tonight we're going to look at what these texts actually say about controlling human numbers, why the Anunnaki might have wanted fewer people, and what they did when humanity grew too large. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. Where are you right now? In bed with the lights dimmed? On the couch as the house goes quiet around you? What time is it where you are? Evening as you're winding down? Or the middle of the night when sleep won't quite come? Wherever you are, just notice your breathing for a moment. You don't have to change anything. Just feel the air moving in and out. Your body knows how to do this, how to settle, how to prepare for rest. Close your eyes if you want to. Feel how your body is resting right now. The bed or couch or chair, holding you up. Your shoulders, your back, your legs, everything supported, nothing you need to do. Here's what makes this story unsettling. The tablets describe something called the Great Flood. But before that flood, they describe a problem. Humans had multiplied, they'd spread everywhere, and their numbers had become too much. The tablets say the Anunnaki grew troubled by how many humans there were. Some versions say humanity's noise kept them from resting. Others suggest the growing population was using too many resources or creating disorder. So a decision was made. There were too many humans. The numbers needed to come down. Now, people who study these things see it differently. Most experts think these are flood myths, stories that lots of ancient cultures told to make sense of natural disasters. Maybe memories of real floods that destroyed early cities, turned into religious stories about angry gods. The idea of gods being annoyed by human noise could just be a metaphor for chaos or environmental problems. That makes sense. Ancient people often explained disasters by saying the gods were upset. But some researchers read these tablets and see something else. They notice how matter-of-fact the language is, how population gets talked about almost like a problem that needs solving. They point to texts where the Anunnaki actually debate different ways to reduce human numbers before they pick the flood. First they try plague, then drought, then finally water. And these researchers wonder, what if these weren't just moral stories? What if the Sumerians were writing down something that really happened? What if there was a time when someone actually controlled how many humans could exist? Tonight we'll explore both possibilities. We'll look at what the tablets say about population limits, about the reasons they give, about what happened when humans became too numerous. We'll go slowly, the way you'd carefully walk through something old and a little disturbing. Gently, thoughtfully, curious. If you're enjoying this, it would mean a lot if you'd like the video and subscribe. It helps these stories reach other people, and it lets me keep making them. Now let everything else fade. Your breathing is slowing down naturally. Your thoughts are drifting. We have time, plenty of time to explore this mystery together, to think about what it would mean if human population was once controlled from somewhere above us, to wonder what the Sumerians were trying to tell us. The tablets have waited thousands of years. They can wait a bit longer while you get comfortable. Ready? Let's begin. The air feels wide and unclaimed in this age. Wind moves freely across open land without resistance. There are no walls to slow it, no fields to guide it, only grass bending gently under passing currents. When you imagine standing here, your breath sinks naturally with the land. Nothing presses in, nothing asks for control. Long before humans counted themselves, climate shaped population quietly. Rain arrived in cycles that could not be predicted precisely. Some years the land softened under frequent storms. Other years it cracked under prolonged heat. Rivers swelled generously and then withdrew without warning. Survival rose and fell with these rhythms. Life expanded when conditions allowed, and receded when they did not. When the earth warms gradually over centuries, plants migrate almost imperceptibly. Grasslands shift their borders. Forests thin or thicken. Animals follow these changes instinctively. Humans move with them. Camps appear near water sources and then dissolve when the land can no longer support them. No decision feels permanent. Movement is response rather than strategy. Long before agriculture anchors people in place, hunger acts as regulator. When numbers grow too large in one area, food thins, illness spreads more easily, groups separate naturally, population adjusts through movement and loss without instruction. There is no sense of failure here. It is simply how life behaves. Perhaps this is the earliest form of population balance. Not planned, not moralized, just environmental feedback. The land gives and withholds without judgment. Humans learn limits through experience rather than decree. When the wind shifts direction, it carries different smells. Damp earth after rain. Dry dust during heat. Smoke from distant fires where another group passes through briefly. These sensory signals guide behaviour. Awareness extends outward. Population follows perception rather than record. Stars move overhead with steady patience. Night arrives fully without artificial light. The sky feels immense. Constellations return season after season unchanged. When clouds part, the stars feel close enough to count. Cosmic time moves independently of human survival, yet it frames it gently. People sense continuity larger than themselves. Long before tools refine control, bodies adapt. Metabolism adjusts to scarcity and abundance. Birth rates respond quietly to stress. Fertility declines during hardship. Increases follow recovery. No one measures this consciously. It is felt through rhythm. The body listens to environment closely. When ice retreats after colder periods, new land opens, lakes form, rivers change course, fertile floodplains appear. Life responds eagerly. Groups gather temporarily. Birth increases. Children arrive into moments of abundance, yet abundance never lasts forever. Change returns. Perhaps early humans sense this impermanence deeply. They do not build expectation beyond the season. Hope exists, but it remains flexible. Loss is not framed as punishment. It is part of movement. Grief passes through the group and continues forward. When storms arrive, they reshape behaviour rather than belief. Shelter improves, movement pauses. Rain cools overheated ground. Lightning passes overhead without explanation. There is awe, but not fear tied to morality. Weather happens. Life responds. Long before spiritual systems formalise, respect exists without hierarchy. The land commands attention because it decides survival. No authority replaces it. No intermediary speaks on its behalf. Earth itself governs numbers. Stars remain silent witnesses. The same sky watches generations appear and fade. Cosmic cycles outlast individual lives easily. This contrast teaches humility without doctrine. Humans are temporary participants in longer patterns. When drought extends longer than expected, population thins. Some leave, some remain and perish. These events are remembered in story but not recorded. Memory remains oral and fluid. Numbers are not counted. Loss is felt immediately, not abstractly. Perhaps this direct feedback prevents large-scale imbalance. When limits are encountered early, they remain manageable. Without surplus, there is no incentive to grow beyond capacity. Population stays closely aligned with environment. The smell of water draws people, naturally. The sound of insects signals seasonal change. Temperature guides daily activity. These cues regulate life continuously. Control is distributed across senses rather than centralized. Long before humans imagine controlling growth, they experience being controlled by conditions. This relationship feels natural. There is no resentment, only adaptation. Survival does not require explanation. When night settles completely, silence deepens. Firelight flickers softly. Shadows dance against temporary shelter. Conversation drifts. Stories may recall journeys or losses. No one speaks of numbers. No one counts who remains. Presence is enough. Perhaps this forgotten world feels distant because it lacks ambition. There is no drive to exceed limits. no desire to dominate environment. Life unfolds within constraint rather than against it. Balance feels quiet, yet change approaches gradually. Climate stabilizes for longer periods. Rivers flood predictably. Certain areas support sustained life. Surplus becomes possible. Storage emerges. Memory accumulates. Movement slows. When people remain in one place longer, population begins to cluster. Environmental regulation weakens slightly. Feedback delays increase. Numbers can grow before scarcity signals appear. This subtle shift matters deeply. Stars still move overhead unchanged. But human experience begins to feel denser beneath them. Space fills with continuity. Loss becomes harder to absorb. Balance requires new methods. Perhaps this is where imagination intervenes. When nature's limits feel delayed, humans seek other signals. Meaning replaces immediacy. Authority begins to form. The land still sets ultimate boundaries. Floods still come, droughts still return. But their lessons arrive slower. People must interpret rather than respond instinctively. As this section closes, the stage is set. A world once governed entirely by Earth begins to transition. Environmental balance alone no longer suffices. Memory thickens. Population gathers. And soon, humans will begin asking a new question. If the Earth no longer sets limits clearly, who does? The land feels quieter now, not emptier, but settled. The wind still moves freely, yet it no longer carries people away so easily. Soil feels deeper underfoot. Riverbanks widen and hold their shape longer. When you imagine standing here, you sense stability beginning to form, gently, without announcement. Long before cities appear, climate enters a calmer phase. Seasonal rhythms repeat with greater reliability. Floods still come, but their timing grows familiar. Dry periods still arrive, but recovery follows. This predictability invites staying. People linger where once they pass through. Camps return to the same places year after year. When humans remain longer, the land begins to remember them. Paths form slowly under repeated steps. Fire pits deepen. Refuse accumulates. These traces alter behaviour. Familiarity replaces vigilance. Memory anchors movement. Long before written records exist, oral memory thickens. Elders recall seasons past. They speak of years when water rose higher, or failed entirely. Children grow hearing these stories. Expectation forms. Planning begins quietly. Population responds not only to present conditions, but remembered ones. Perhaps this is where natural regulation softens. When people anticipate abundance, they remain longer. When they remember recovery, they endure scarcity. Numbers grow before limits appear. The land still responds, but more slowly. Feedback delays widen. When the earth gives generously for several seasons, births increase. Children survive more often. Groups expand, space fills. The smell of smoke lingers longer in valleys. Sound carries differently as shelters cluster. The sensory environment changes subtly. Stars still wheel overhead unchanged. Yet nights feel brighter from multiple fires. The sky competes gently with human presence. Cosmic time continues its calm cycle, while human time thickens beneath it. Long before agriculture formalizes, tending begins. People clear small areas. They encourage growth of favored plants. They protect water sources. These actions feel minor, temporary, yet they mark shift. Humans begin shaping conditions rather than only responding. When animals are followed repeatedly, their patterns become known. Hunting becomes selective. Certain groups are spared, others targeted. Population management begins unconsciously. Survival strategies grow sophisticated. Perhaps this sophistication introduces new vulnerability. When success depends on memory and planning, mistakes carry weight. Loss feels heavier. Responsibility grows. The future becomes something to manage rather than await. The land still offers sensory guidance. Rain smells familiar. Soil texture signals fertility. Temperature shifts guide activity. But interpretation now overlays sensation. Thought intervenes. Long before counting systems appear, comparison begins. This year was better than last. This valley holds more. That river fails sooner. Judgment shapes movement. Decision replaces instinct gradually. Silence changes too. Night still brings calm. But conversation lingers longer. Plans are discussed quietly. Concerns surface gently. The unknown future enters speech. Anxiety remains subtle, but present. Perhaps this is where population begins to feel like something that can exceed limits. When memory buffers hardship, growth continues longer. When hardship arrives, its impact feels sharper. Adjustment becomes reactive rather than automatic. Archaeological layers from this period show gradual thickening. More tools, more hearths, more remains. These are not cities yet, but they are accumulations. Presence persists. When drought eventually returns, population thins again. But the lesson feels different. Loss contrasts with remembered abundance. Recovery feels uncertain. The land no longer feels endlessly forgiving. Stars. Witness these shifts patiently. The same constellations mark seasons, but human interpretation of them begins to change. Certain stars become associated with return or loss. The sky starts to carry meaning. Perhaps meaning emerges when certainty fades. When direct feedback weakens, interpretation fills the gap. Humans begin looking beyond immediate environment for explanation. The smell of stored grain appears. Storage changes behavior profoundly. Food extends time. It smooths scarcity. But it also enables growth beyond immediate support. Population increases more rapidly. Long before authority formalizes, leadership emerges. Those who remember past cycles advise others. Their voice carries weight. Guidance becomes influence. Influence becomes structure. This structure is still informal, flexible, yet it marks transition. Survival now depends partly on social coordination. Numbers matter more. When night settles, silence deepens differently. Fires burn longer, groups remain close. Security replaces mobility. Comfort increases. But movement becomes harder. Perhaps this is the moment when natural limits feel distant. Population growth no longer self-corrects immediately. Intervention becomes tempting. The land still sets ultimate boundaries. Floods still erase settlements. Disease still spreads when density increases. But the connection feels delayed. Humans must interpret cause. As interpretation grows, so does imagination. Stories begin connecting loss to behavior, survival to favor. The seeds of moral explanation appear. Stars remain steady. The earth remains patient. Yet human experience grows layered. Memory accumulates. Population gathers. As this section closes, we sense the transition nearing completion. A world once regulated entirely by climate now relies increasingly on planning and meaning. The question of balance grows louder. In the next movement, humans will take another step. They will anchor themselves fully. They will build places meant to last. And population, once guided by Earth alone, will enter a new phase entirely. The land still looks generous at first glance. Rivers move steadily within their banks. Fields green and fade in familiar rhythm. Birds return each season without fail. When you stand here, you might think nothing has changed. Yet beneath this calm, something subtle has shifted. Long before cities rise, humans begin staying longer than the land expects. Settlements linger through seasons once used only briefly. Shelters strengthen, paths harden, fire pits deepen. The ground absorbs repeated presence and begins to respond differently. Recovery slows. When population clusters tightly, the Earth's feedback softens and then sharpens. Abundance lasts longer at first. Births increase quietly. Children survive more often. Numbers grow without immediate consequence. This delay feels like permission. It is not. Perhaps this is where balance begins to slip from instinct into abstraction. Limits no longer announce themselves clearly. Hunger comes later. Disease spreads faster. Loss feels sudden rather than gradual. The land still speaks, but more softly and later. When floods arrive, they affect more people at once. When drought persists, its impact multiplies. Density amplifies consequence. What once corrected gently now disrupts deeply. The earth still regulates, but the experience feels harsher. Long before rulers emerge, coordination becomes necessary. Water must be shared, land must be allocated, movement must be negotiated. These arrangements feel temporary, yet they repeat. Informal rules form quietly. Expectation replaces instinct. Perhaps population itself begins to feel like something that can exceed safety. When numbers grow beyond immediate support, anxiety appears. Concern for tomorrow enters conversation. The future becomes fragile. Stars continue moving overhead unchanged. Cosmic time remains indifferent. Yet humans begin reading signs into the sky. Unusual patterns feel meaningful. Regular cycles feel reassuring. The heavens become reference point when the land signals feel delayed. The smell of stored grain fills enclosed spaces. Storage extends life. It also extends growth. Children arrive into buffered systems. Population expands beyond immediate carrying capacity. Success hides risk. Silence changes again. Night remains calm, but thought lingers. People lie awake considering outcomes. Planning stretches further ahead. Memory projects forward. Control feels tempting. Perhaps this is where imagination intervenes most strongly. When direct regulation weakens, interpretation fills the gap. Stories begin to explain imbalance. Loss gains cause. Survival gains favour. Meaning attaches to outcome. Archaeological layers from this threshold show increased complexity. More tools, more structures, more remains. Yet signs of stress appear as well. Waste accumulates. Disease markers increase. Nutrition varies unevenly. When groups suffer loss, they look for reason. Environmental explanation feels insufficient. The delay between action and consequence confuses. Something else must decide. Authority beyond the land feels necessary. Long before gods take names, forces are imagined. Fate, favour, displeasure. These ideas circulate quietly. They do not replace Earth yet. They supplement it. Perhaps population control emerges first as narrative, a way to make sense of fluctuation. If numbers rise too quickly, something unseen intervenes. If numbers fall, something unseen withdraws support. The land still matters deeply. Floods still carve new paths. Soil still nourishes or fails, but its voice competes now with story. Humans listen to both. Stars offer consistency. They repeat faithfully. This reliability comforts when Earth feels unpredictable. The sky becomes stabilizing reference. Order above compensates for uncertainty below. When night deepens, stillness returns. Fires burn low. Wind passes gently through clustered shelters. Silence carries thought rather than emptiness. Reflection deepens. Perhaps this is the final moment before transformation. Balance no longer belongs solely to environment. It begins shifting toward system, toward meaning, toward oversight. The question takes shape quietly. If the land no longer sets limits clearly, who will? This question does not demand immediate answer. It waits. It gathers weight. As this section closes, the forgotten world fades fully. Earth alone no longer governs growth. Memory, storage, density, and anxiety have altered the relationship. In the next movement, we will watch humans respond. They will build permanence. They will record life. And they will begin imagining watchers beyond the sky. Not out of fear, but out of need. The clay feels cool when lifted from the river's edge. It bends easily under pressure, soft, patient, receptive. When shaped and left beneath the sun, it changes slowly. Moisture fades, surface hardens. What was temporary becomes fixed. This quiet transformation mirrors something larger beginning to unfold. Long before myths describe gods regulating humanity, archaeology shows humans regulating themselves. In southern Mesopotamia, around 3300 BCE, small clay tablets begin appearing in the ground. They are not stories, they are lists, grain quantities, livestock counts, work assignments, the earliest marks of administration. When archaeologists excavate sites like Uruk, they find these tablets stacked in rooms, buried deliberately, sometimes discarded in pits once their purpose was fulfilled. Light falls across their surfaces, revealing wedge-shaped impressions made by reed styluses. Each mark records presence. Each mark reduces life to symbol. Perhaps the most important detail is what begins to appear alongside resources. People, names, dependents, children. The tablets do not dwell on emotion. They record fact. A household contains this many mouths. A worker supports this many. Dependence. Birth becomes measurable. When population clusters reach a certain density, memory alone no longer suffices. Oral recall fails, disputes arise, surplus must be allocated, scarcity anticipated. Counting becomes survival strategy. Writing emerges not to preserve history, but to manage future. Some scholars believe these records reflect neutral administration. Others suggest they mark the first step toward control. Once life is counted, it can be planned. Once planned, it can be limited. The tablet does not enforce restriction, but it enables it. Sensory details ground this shift. The faint scraping sound of stylus on clay, the smell of wet earth in storage rooms, sunlight warming drying tablets. These daily sensations normalize record keeping. What begins as tool becomes habit. Long before laws restrict reproduction, documentation influences behaviour subtly. When children are recorded as dependents, their arrival affects allocation. When allocation matters, birth gains consequence. Decisions follow quietly. Perhaps this is where population begins to feel like something that can be too much. Too many dependents strain resources. Too few weaken labour. Balance becomes goal. Counting enables adjustment. Archaeologists note inconsistencies. Some households listed repeatedly. Others appear briefly and vanish. Entire groups are absent from record. Were they excluded intentionally? Were they transient? We do not know. When scholars date these tablets, they notice rapid spread. Writing appears almost simultaneously across sites. Knowledge transfers quickly. Administration becomes shared language. Population management enters collective practice. Stars still move overhead unchanged. Cosmic time remains patient. Yet human time accelerates. Generations now compare themselves through record. The past feels closer. The future feels planned. Perhaps this closeness intensifies anxiety. When continuity is visible, disruption feels threatening. Control becomes appealing. Writing does not cause fear, but it amplifies awareness. Long before gods are invoked explicitly, systems operate quietly. People comply because survival depends on coordination. Authority emerges through necessity rather than force. Unanswered questions remain. Who decided which births mattered? Who recorded whom? How did people feel about being counted? Archaeology offers pattern, not voice. What we can see is emergence, the transition from instinctive balance to managed balance. Population shifts from environmental regulation towards social regulation. Writing makes this possible. As this section closes, we stand at the threshold. Counting has begun. Memory has hardened. Life is visible in new ways. In the next movement, this visibility will seek justification. Administration will look upward, and the idea of divine oversight will enter the record quietly and convincingly. The ground feels compacted here, layered by time and weight. Dust rises gently with each careful movement. When archaeologists lower themselves into these ancient rooms, the air feels cooler, quieter, as if sound has learned restraint. Light enters cautiously, revealing surfaces that have not been touched for thousands of years. This is where interpretation begins to shift. Long before anyone speaks of gods controlling population, clay records already hint at something more than accounting. In the late 19th century, excavations at sites like Nippur and Uruk uncover administrative tablets unlike earlier examples. These do not only list resources, they name deities alongside human tallies. The pairing feels deliberate. The mini-story unfolds slowly here. In 1889, a team working under the University of Pennsylvania excavates a mound near the ancient city of Nippur. Progress is careful and methodical. One morning a worker's tool strikes hardened clay. Not a wall, not debris, a sealed room. Inside, shelves collapsed inward, protecting hundreds of tablets, stacked deliberately. This is not trash, this is archive. As tablets are lifted and cleaned, scholars notice repetition. Certain divine names appear consistently near population references, offerings listed beside dependents, blessings recorded near increases, withholding noted near decline. The language is calm, administrative. There is no mythic flourish. The gods appear as part of system. At first, translators assume symbolism. Deities represent institutions. Temples stand for gods. The interpretation feels safe, but as more tablets emerge, the pattern strengthens. Divine names are not interchangeable. Specific gods appear tied to fertility and continuity repeatedly. This specificity raises questions. When these tablets are dated, they cluster around the late 4th and early 3rd millennium BCE. This is a period of rapid urban growth. Population density increases, resources strain, administration expands. The timing feels significant. Some scholars believe the divine references legitimize authority. When priests manage reproduction through marriage and ritual, they attribute decisions to gods. Others suggest belief genuinely guided behaviour. People followed divine calendars for intimacy, abstained during forbidden periods. The system regulated itself through faith. Perhaps both operated together. Authority enforced structure. Belief softened resistance. The gods functioned as explanation and enforcement simultaneously. Sensory traces remain vivid in excavation notes. The smell of damp clay released after centuries. The way light reveals impressions slowly. The feel of stylus marks still sharp. These are not ceremonial texts. They were handled daily. Their content shaped routine. Unanswered questions persist. Why do some population lists omit entire neighbourhoods? Why do certain families appear favoured across generations? Why does fertility language intensify during periods of stress? Archaeology offers correlation, not intention. Stars still move overhead as scholars debate. Cosmic time continues unaffected. Yet human interpretation evolves. Each new tablet shifts understanding slightly. Certainty remains elusive. Perhaps the most striking aspect is restraint. These texts do not dramatize control. They normalize it. Regulation arrives quietly through routine. There is no decree stating population must be limited. There is only record showing how life is managed. This discovery alters the narrative. Control may not have been imposed suddenly by gods. It may have grown organically from administration, then been sanctified. The Anunnaki appear where justification is needed most. As this section closes, the emergence phase deepens. Writing now links human life to divine order explicitly. Population management moves from practical necessity to sacred duty. In the next movement, we will explore how this belief system matures, how daily life unfolds under divine oversight, and how a civilization reaches its height believing balance has been achieved. The city feels different now, not louder, but denser. Sound lingers longer between walls, footsteps overlap, fires burn closer together. When you stand in this place, you sense intention shaping movement. Life no longer drifts, it is guided, gently, persistently. Long before formal laws restrict population, belief begins doing the work. Archaeological layers from early Sumerian cities show increasing ritual activity tied to fertility. Small altars appear within domestic spaces. Offerings accompany household records. Birth and survival move closer to sacred language. When scholars examine these domestic shrines, they notice consistency. Certain symbols repeat. Crescent shapes, star marks, images associated with divine oversight. These objects are not decorative. They sit near sleeping areas, near food preparation, near places of intimacy. Belief enters daily rhythm quietly. Perhaps this is the moment when population growth feels like responsibility rather than accident. When survival depends on balance, balance must be protected. Fertility becomes something to manage carefully, not too much, not too little. Some scholars believe this reflects ecological awareness. Cities strain local resources. Too many mouths invite famine. Too few weaken labour. Regulation becomes necessary. Others suggest anxiety drives ritual. When outcomes feel unpredictable, people seek reassurance through ceremony. The Anunnaki appear increasingly in text from this period as guardians of order. They oversee not only labour and justice, but continuity. Their favour ensures abundance. Their displeasure explains loss. The gods become emotional buffers for social stress. Sensory traces deepen this shift. Incense smoke softens air. Chant echoes gently within enclosed spaces. Clay figurines warm under lamplight. These sensations anchor belief physically. Control feels embodied rather than imposed. When population records show decline, rituals intensify. Offerings increase. Language of restoration appears. Birth is framed as return to balance. Loss as deviation. The system adapts through interpretation. Perhaps belief itself regulates behaviour effectively. Couples time intimacy around ritual calendars. Certain periods are avoided, others favoured. Population adjusts indirectly. No authority needs to intervene overtly. Unanswered questions remain. Did people feel restricted? Did they feel protected? Did dissent exist quietly? Archaeology cannot hear emotion clearly. It reads pattern. Stars still wheel overhead unchanged. The same sky that once governed life alone now shares authority with gods imagined beneath it. Cosmic cycles reinforce ritual timing. Astronomy and belief merge. Perhaps this merger feels comforting. When Earth's signals feel delayed, the sky offers steadiness. Balance moves upward. As this section closes, emergence completes. Population control has not been declared. It has been absorbed. Belief sanctifies necessity. Routine normalizes regulation. In the next movement, we will enter the Golden Age, a time when systems appear to work smoothly, when balance feels achieved, when control feels like harmony. And beneath that harmony, unseen tensions begin to gather quietly. The city wakes without urgency. Light spreads evenly across flat roofs and narrow streets. Water moves through channels with practiced ease. When you imagine standing here at first light, the air feels calm, organized, gently held. Nothing rushes, nothing resists. The day begins already aligned. Imagine walking along a main thoroughfare as morning settles. Doors open in familiar sequence. The sound of grinding grain carries softly. Animals move where they are expected to move. Children step aside instinctively for carts. This is a place that has learned its own rhythm. Order no longer feels imposed, it feels lived. At the centre, the temple rises with quiet authority. Its stepped form catches the sun in stages. Shadow retreats slowly from each level. The stone feels warm by mid-morning. Priests ascend at measured pace. Their movements are unhurried. Precision matters more than speed. Offerings are carried carefully. Balance is acknowledged daily. Daily life reflects this harmony. Bakers prepare amounts that match need. Farmers coordinate irrigation with calendar precision. Scribes record births and rations without emotion. These acts repeat until they feel natural. Population remains steady because every part of the system responds to every other part. Imagine a household preparing for the day. The floor feels cool beneath bare feet. A simple meal is shared quietly. Roles are understood. The adults know when to work. The children know where they belong. Birth has brought responsibility rather than surprise. Continuity is planned. Technological achievement supports this stability. Irrigation channels distribute water evenly across fields. Levees guide floods without blocking them. Storage facilities regulate surplus across seasons. These systems require cooperation and maintenance. They also require trust. Everyone depends on everyone else. Astronomy plays a subtle role. Priests observe the sky carefully. Certain stars mark planting times. Lunar cycles guide ritual calendars. The heavens reinforce the schedule below. When the sky repeats reliably, belief deepens. Cosmic order validates social order. Art from this period mirrors calm confidence. Reliefs depict orderly scenes. Figures stand composed. Movement feels intentional. There is no chaos portrayed, no struggle. Beauty lies in balance rather than drama. The gods appear serene. Humans appear respectful. The message feels reassuring. Perhaps this is why people accept regulation easily. Control is not experienced as restriction. It feels like care. Population growth aligns with resources. Scarcity feels distant. The future feels predictable. Security softens anxiety. Imagine a public ceremony marking seasonal transition. The crowd gathers quietly. Incense smoke drifts upward. A priest speaks measured words. Silence follows. No spectacle occurs. The ritual affirms continuity rather than change. People leave feeling steadied. Stars rise again at night. The same constellations return. Lamps glow evenly across the city. Sound softens. Families rest, knowing tomorrow will resemble today. Predictability becomes comfort. Philosophically, this age reveals something profound. Humans seek alignment more than dominance. When systems work smoothly, belief strengthens. Authority becomes invisible. People follow not because they are forced, but because the structure feels right. Yet subtle signs suggest fragility. Records grow more detailed. Ritual calendars expand. Monitoring increases. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of attention. A balanced system requires vigilance. Perhaps some sense this quietly. When balance must be maintained carefully, it can be lost. Stability depends on continued cooperation and belief. Any disruption could ripple outward. Population remains central concern. Too many births strain stores. Too few weaken labour. Regulation remains gentle but constant. Marriage patterns stabilise. Ritual timing influences intimacy. Control operates through culture rather than command. Imagine standing atop the temple at dusk. The city below hums softly. The river glimmers faintly. The sky darkens gradually. Stars appear unchanged. From here, human order looks intricate. Cosmic order looks effortless. The contrast feels calming and humbling. This golden age feels complete from within. People trust the system. They trust the gods. They trust the rhythm. Few question foundations when life feels secure. But history teaches patience. No system remains perfect forever. Growth invites strain. Success encourages expansion. Expansion challenges balance. As this section closes, we hold this moment gently. A civilization at ease with itself. Population stable. Resources aligned. Belief supportive. Control indistinguishable from harmony. Yet beneath this calm surface something remains unseen. Small tensions, uncounted lives, questions deferred rather than answered. In the next movement we will step closer to individual experience within this harmony. We will follow a single day, a single life, and watch how balance feels from the inside, before the hidden begins to stir. The day begins before the city fully wakes. Cool air rests against the skin. Stone beneath bare feet holds the night's memory. When you imagine this morning, it feels deliberate rather than hurried. The light arrives slowly. It knows where to go. Shadows withdraw in familiar patterns. The city breathes as one. Imagine a household opening its door at first light. A woman steps out briefly to feel the air. She listens. Distant water, soft voices, the smell of grain already warming. She returns inside and wakes the others with gentle sounds. No alarms, no urgency. The day unfolds by habit. This family belongs to the city's counted life. Their names are known, their roles understood. Birth here is not accident. It is anticipation fulfilled. Children are part of plan. Their presence shapes work and rest alike. The father prepares to leave for the fields. He pauses at a small domestic shrine. The surface is worn smooth by years of touch. A simple offering is placed. Grain measured carefully. A brief silence follows. No request is spoken aloud. The ritual affirms alignment rather than desire. Imagine walking with him through narrow streets as the sun rises higher. Others move with similar purpose. Paths feel practiced. No one collides. Everyone anticipates movement. The city's design guides behaviour quietly. Order lives in stone and habit. At the fields, irrigation channels glimmer faintly. Water arrives at expected times. Gates open and close smoothly. Labourers work in coordinated rhythm. Tools strike soil with steady cadence. The sound is soothing, productive. Nothing feels wasted. Astronomy guides this work, subtly. Certain stars set the calendar weeks before. The moon's phase determined when planting began. The sky offered timing. The land responded, the people followed. This alignment feels ancient and reliable. Now the mini-story unfolds fully. At midday, a ceremony is held marking a seasonal threshold. The family gathers with others near the temple courtyard. The heat softens conversation. Incense smoke drifts upward. Priests move calmly into position. There is no crowding. Everyone knows where to stand. The ritual begins with silence, a long pause. Wind moves gently across stone. Then measured words are spoken, not dramatic, reassuring. The ceremony acknowledges the city's numbers. Thanks are given for stability. A blessing is offered for continued balance. During the ritual, a scribe records attendance. Names are checked quietly. Presence matters. The act of being seen reinforces belonging. The family feels comfort in recognition. They remain within the circle. The ceremony ends. Without applause, people disperse calmly. The workday resumes. Nothing feels altered, yet everything is affirmed. This is how control operates here, through reassurance rather than command. The afternoon passes steadily. Children assist with small tasks. They learn by watching. Roles are absorbed early. Identity forms through repetition. Birth has given them place. The system shapes expectation gently. As evening approaches, the family returns home. The light softens. Stone cools again. A meal is shared quietly. Conversation touches practical matters. Tomorrow's work, weather patterns, the position of the moon. The sky remains reference point. Stars appear gradually, the same stars their ancestors watched. Their movement confirms continuity. The family rests under that certainty. Sleep arrives easily. The future feels held. Philosophically, this day reveals much. Control does not feel oppressive when it aligns with need. Regulation disappears when embedded in culture. People follow patterns because they work, because they protect, because they reassure. Yet beneath the calm, subtle questions linger. What happens when alignment falters? What happens when numbers shift unexpectedly? What happens when belief weakens? The family does not ask these questions aloud. There is no reason to. Stability discourages doubt. When life feels secure, curiosity softens. But history teaches gently. Even the calmest days carry seeds of change. Systems that feel permanent rarely are. Balance maintained through vigilance can tip when vigilance fades. Stars continue their steady paths. Cosmic time watches without comment. The city sleeps under a sky that has seen many balances rise and fall. As this section closes, the mini-story completes. A full day lived within harmony, measured, supported, quietly controlled. In the next movement, we will look beyond this household, toward those who live at the edges of balance, toward the subtle pressures that gather unseen even at the height of order. Because beneath harmony, something always waits. The outer streets feel calmer and rougher at the same time. Stone here is more worn. Paths bend less predictably. When you imagine standing at the city's edge, the air feels slightly cooler, touched more often by open land than by walls. Sound travels differently. Silence settles faster once voices pass. Imagine a household here as morning unfolds. The light reaches them later. Shadows linger longer along the walls. Their door opens with the same familiarity as those closer to the temple. Yet recognition feels thinner. They belong to the city, but not to its centre. Their lives continue without ceremony. These families are counted, but lightly. Their names appear less often on tablets. Their roles shift according to need. They provide labour when shortages arise. They move when space tightens. Birth here is welcomed, but cautiously. Each child adds warmth and weight. Daily routines mirror the city's rhythm, but with more flexibility. Work changes often, one day hauling grain, another repairing channels. Skill matters more than lineage. Adaptability replaces inheritance. The system needs them precisely because they remain movable. Imagine a woman here watching the sky at dusk. She knows the stars well enough to sense seasonal change. She follows the same ritual calendar, but with less access. Temple ceremonies feel distant. Blessings feel indirect. Faith exists, but quietly. Population control touches these lives most subtly. When numbers rise too quickly, work becomes scarce. When numbers fall, opportunity appears. Balance feels personal rather than abstract. Survival depends on reading conditions carefully. Some scholars believe these edge communities absorbed fluctuation intentionally. The system allowed flexibility here so the centre could remain stable. Others suggest this separation emerged naturally. Order concentrates. Margins absorb uncertainty. Perhaps both are true. Systems often protect themselves unconsciously. Balance is preserved by shifting pressure outward. No decree announces this. It simply happens. Children growing up here learn awareness early. They watch adults adapt. They sense when to stay quiet, when to move, when to wait. Their future feels open, but uncertain. Birth does not guarantee position. Stars still shine overhead equally. Cosmic time does not distinguish centre from edge, yet human systems do. This contrast shapes perception. The sky offers equality. The city offers structure. Silence deepens more quickly here at night. Fewer lamps burn. Darkness feels closer, not threatening, just present. Sleep comes lighter. Dreams may wander. Perhaps these lives retain something ancient. A memory of flexibility, a connection to earlier balance when movement regulated growth naturally. They exist between worlds. Philosophically, this reveals how control operates gently. The system does not need to restrict everyone equally. It regulates most where influence matters most. Elsewhere, adaptation absorbs fluctuation. Yet this arrangement carries tension. When margins grow too large, they strain center. When movement increases, stability weakens. Balance depends on careful proportion. As time passes, even these edges feel pressure. Population grows, space tightens, mobility decreases, the margin narrows, stars continue their slow movement, seasons repeat, but human density increases steadily, the buffer shrinks. As this section closes, we sense that harmony relies on quiet sacrifice. Some lives absorb uncertainty so others feel stability. Control spreads unevenly. In the next movement, we will look at how the Golden Age understands itself, how belief interprets balance, and how unseen pressures begin shaping change beneath calm surfaces. Something remains hidden, quiet, waiting. The city rests in confidence now, not the loud confidence of conquest, but the quiet assurance that comes from repetition without disruption. Days resemble one another closely. Seasons arrive when expected. Births occur within acceptable bounds. Loss is absorbed without panic. When you imagine this moment, it feels settled, almost timeless. Imagine standing at a high point near the temple at twilight. Below you, rooftops glow softly in fading light. Smoke rises in thin columns. The river moves steadily beyond the walls. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels threatened. The city believes it has learned how to endure. This belief shapes behavior more than any rule. When people trust continuity, they invest deeply in routine. Children are trained early. Roles are reinforced gently. Marriage follows established patterns. Population remains predictable because expectation guides choice. Astronomy strengthens this confidence. Priests continue observing the sky with care. The same stars return at the same times. Eclipses are rare and carefully noted. Celestial order appears unwavering. If the heavens remain stable, why should the city not as well? Imagine a night ceremony marking the turning of a cycle. Lamps flicker across the courtyard. A priest points toward a familiar star rising at the horizon. Words spoken acknowledge return rather than change. The crowd listens calmly. Assurance settles. Art from this period reflects permanence. Reliefs emphasize continuity. Kings appear as caretakers rather than conquerors. Gods are depicted seated, composed, unchanging. Nothing dramatic intrudes. The visual language reassures the viewer that order holds. Population control fades from conscious thought because it works. When systems function smoothly, they disappear from awareness. People no longer feel regulated. They feel protected. Birth aligns with need. Loss aligns with explanation. Balance feels natural. Yet beneath this calm philosophical shift occurs. When order feels eternal, adaptability weakens. People prepare less for disruption. They trust systems to hold. Memory of earlier instability fades. The past feels distant. Perhaps this is why later collapse surprises so deeply. Confidence dulls vigilance. Control becomes assumption. When something is assumed, it is no longer examined. Silence plays role here too. Doubt finds little space to grow. There is no incentive to question what works. Curiosity softens, acceptance deepens. Stars continue their ancient paths. The same constellations watched over earlier migrations. Now they watch settled lives. Cosmic time remains patient. It has seen many orders appear eternal, until they were not. Population continues growing slowly. Storage buffers fluctuation. Ritual absorbs anxiety. Authority remains trusted. The system appears resilient. Yet subtle pressures increase. Climate shifts slightly. Trade routes strain. Resources redistribute unevenly. These changes remain small at first, easily managed, easily explained. Perhaps this is the danger of success. It masks vulnerability. When control feels complete, contingency planning fades. Imagine a scribe, recording births late into the evening. The clay tablet fills with names. Numbers remain within acceptable range. He feels no concern. The record confirms stability. The future appears secure. But what if growth accelerates unexpectedly? What if drought persists longer? What if belief falters? These questions do not surface openly. They remain hypothetical, distant. Philosophically, this age reveals how humans relate to control. We desire it most when it works quietly. We forget its presence. We trust it implicitly. Yet control is not static. It requires adjustment. It requires awareness. When awareness fades, rigidity increases. Stars witness this shift without judgment. They do not intervene. They continue shining. Their indifference offers perspective. Nothing beneath them remains unchanged forever. As this section closes, the Golden Age completes its arc. Civilization feels secure. Population feels balanced. Belief feels justified. Control feels invisible. And that invisibility is its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. In the next movement, we will step beyond harmony. We will explore hidden dimensions beneath confidence. The quiet questions that begin to surface when certainty settles too deeply. Because when order feels eternal, change often waits just beyond perception. The temple courtyard feels different at night. Stone cools quickly, sound softens. When you imagine standing here after sunset, the air carries a hushed expectancy, as if the space itself listens. Lamps glow low, shadows stretch. The city's confidence rests, but something else wakes. When priests observe the sky from this place, they do so patiently. Long before instruments refine measurement, naked eyes track motion. Stars rise and set with steady discipline. The moon repeats its phases faithfully. Eclipses arrive rarely, memorably. The sky offers a calendar that never speaks, yet instructs. Perhaps this is where hidden regulation deepens. When ritual timing follows, celestial cycles' intimacy follows ritual. Certain nights are favoured, others avoided, not by command, but by custom. Birth patterns shift gradually. Population responds without overt restriction. Archaeological evidence suggests these alignments mattered deeply. Temples orient towards specific horizon points. Doorways frame sunrise on particular days. Shadows mark seasonal thresholds. These architectural choices embed time into stone. The building itself instructs behaviour quietly. When you walk these corridors, you feel guidance without words. Light tells you when to pause. Darkness invites stillness. Movement aligns with cosmic rhythm. Control hides within environment. Some scholars believe these alignments served purely symbolic purpose. Others suggest practical function. Calendars regulate labour, ritual regulates intimacy. Together they influence growth. The distinction may not matter to those living within it. Sensory details reinforce this experience. The faint echo of footsteps in enclosed halls, the cool touch of stone at night, the smell of oil lamps and incense lingering after ceremonies. These sensations anchor timing physically. Perhaps this is why belief feels effortless. When architecture teaches rhythm, the body learns unconsciously. Behaviour follows environment. Choice remains. But pathways narrow. Stars remain central witnesses. Their slow movement feels eternal. Their repetition comforts. When change threatens, the sky reassures. If the heavens hold steady, balance must be possible. Yet hidden mechanisms always carry risk. When regulation becomes invisible, it escapes examination. People follow patterns without questioning purpose. Meaning replaces inquiry. Unanswered questions linger here. Did priests understand the demographic impact of ritual calendars? Did they notice patterns in birth and decline? Or did they simply follow tradition inherited unquestioned? Archaeology cannot answer intention. What remains visible is integration. Astronomy, architecture, ritual, daily life. These elements weave together seamlessly. Population responds gently. No decree is needed. Silence deepens in these spaces. Night stillness allows reflection. Perhaps some sensed the subtle influence. Perhaps others felt only comfort. As this section closes, we glimpse control operating beneath awareness. Not imposed, embedded, hidden in light and shadow. The system feels elegant, invisible, effective. In the next movement, we will look beneath the ground itself, at what modern science uncovers, and how hidden structures continue shaping interpretation today. The ground feels cooler here, heavier, layered with intention. When you imagine standing above these buried spaces, there is a sense that something remains unfinished. not abandoned, simply waiting. Stone rests patiently. Silence settles deeply. Beneath the visible city, another story lingers. Modern excavation reveals that many Sumerian structures extend downward as much as upward. Foundations are not simple supports. They contain chambers, channels, and sealed spaces whose purpose is not immediately clear. Some store water, others seem symbolic. A few resist easy explanation. Perhaps these underground designs served practical needs. Climate control, storage, drainage. Cities required management not only above ground but beneath it. Water must be guided carefully, excess removed, foundations preserved. Technology here appears thoughtful rather than primitive. Yet some features suggest something more deliberate. Narrow passages aligned with cardinal directions, shafts that allow limited light at precise times of year. These are not necessary for stability. They seem intentional, patterned, purposeful. When archaeologists shine light into these spaces, dust glimmers softly, air feels cooler, sound behaves differently. A whisper carries farther, silence deepens. These sensory shifts alter perception. Underground space invites reverence. Some scholars believe these areas supported ritual. Others propose they housed archives or ceremonial objects. A few suggest they serve symbolic connection between underworld and heavens. In Sumerian belief, the cosmos spans above, below, and between. Architecture may reflect that worldview physically. Perhaps these hidden layers contributed subtly to population regulation. Sacred spaces beneath temples reinforce ideas of order and consequence. The unseen carries authority. Behavior aligns with belief when consequence feels omnipresent. Modern science adds perspective. Ground-penetrating surveys reveal consistent patterns across sites, similar depths, similar orientations. This consistency suggests shared knowledge. Techniques transmitted carefully, possibly guarded. Unanswered questions persist. Why were some spaces sealed intentionally? Why were others accessible only to select individuals? Who decided what remained unseen? Archaeology observes result, not decision. Stars remain reference even here. Orientation underground still aligns with sky above. Cosmic order permeates architecture fully. Above and below mirror one another. The system feels complete. Perhaps this completeness reinforces control. When every layer of life reflects order, deviation feels unnatural. People conform because conformity feels embedded in reality itself. Silence plays powerful role underground. Sound dampens, light fades, time feels slower. Such environments shape emotion. Reverence deepens. Authority strengthens without force. When you imagine ancient inhabitants entering these spaces, you sense humility. Bodies move carefully, voices lower. The unseen demands respect. This emotional response reinforces belief more effectively than instruction. Philosophically, this suggests control does not require coercion. It requires environment that shapes perception. When surroundings communicate, order behavior follows naturally. Yet hidden systems also obscure accountability. When authority feels cosmic, responsibility diffuses. Decisions feel inevitable rather than chosen. Population shifts appear destined rather than managed. As modern excavations continue, more spaces are revealed. New alignments discovered. Old assumptions adjusted. Mystery persists. The deeper archaeologists dig, the more questions surface. Still today, research continues quietly. Techniques improve. Interpretations evolve. Certainty remains elusive. Perhaps it always will. As this section closes, we recognize the power of what lies unseen. Control hidden beneath stone feels ancient, effective, and difficult to challenge. In the next movement, we will turn from architecture to meaning, from structure to symbol. We will explore how myth carries regulation gently through story, and how imagination completes the system. The stories feel quiet here, not dramatic, not loud. When you imagine hearing them for the first time, they arrive like evening air, gradual, settling, never demanding attention. Myth moves, slowly through the city. It does not shout commands, it suggests patterns. Long before written law restricts behavior, narrative shapes expectation. Sumerian myths speak of order, balance, continuity. The Anunnaki appear as stewards rather than conquerors. They oversee cycles, They maintain measure. Their presence explains why things must remain within bounds. Perhaps this is where population regulation finds its most enduring form. When stories teach restraint, people internalize limits. Choice remains, but consequence feels cosmic. Myth replaces enforcement with meaning. Symbols reinforce these stories everywhere. Carved reliefs show gods holding measuring rods. Scales appear repeatedly. Imagery emphasizes balance rather than abundance. Fertility symbols exist, but always paired with control. Creation follows order. When children grow up hearing these stories, they learn expectations early. They absorb values without instruction. The gods reward harmony. Excess invites correction. Population becomes moral concept rather than numerical one. Some scholars believe these myths simply reflect social reality. Others suggest they actively shaped it. Perhaps both are true. Story and structure reinforce each other. Belief legitimizes system. System validates belief. Sensory experience deepens myth's impact. Storytelling happens at dusk. Firelight flickers, shadows dance, voices soften, attention narrows. The setting invites receptivity. Meaning enters gently. Stars often appear within these stories. Gods descend from the sky. They return upward. The heavens feel connected intimately to human affairs. Cosmic order legitimizes social order again. Perhaps this connection makes regulation feel benevolent. Control arrives from above rather than from neighbours. Responsibility diffuses upward. Compliance feels reverent rather than forced. Unanswered questions remain. Did people question these stories? Did alternative myths exist quietly? Archaeology preserves dominant narratives. Dissent rarely leaves trace, yet myth's power lies in repetition. The same stories told across generations solidify expectation. Population growth slows not through decree, but through belief about what is proper. Silence accompanies myth often. Not everything is explained. Gaps invite acceptance. Mystery reinforces authority. When something cannot be questioned, it guides behaviour effectively. Philosophically, this reveals something timeless. Humans prefer meaning to restriction. We accept limits more easily when they feel purposeful, when framed as care rather than control. Perhaps this is why the idea of divine oversight persists across cultures, not because it is proven, but because it comforts. It provides structure where uncertainty exists. Stars continue watching silently. Myths change. Systems evolve. But the need to explain balance remains constant. As this section closes, we see how story completes structure. Architecture guides movement. Ritual guides timing. Myth guides interpretation. Together they regulate life quietly. In the next movement, we will step back from belief and look directly at questions. Competing interpretations. Lingering mysteries. What we know and what we may never know. Because even the softest stories leave shadows, and those shadows invite wondering. The questions arrive quietly, not as challenges, but as invitations. When you imagine standing at the edge of what we know, the air feels open, cool, patient. Nothing presses for conclusion. The mind loosens. Curiosity breathes. This is where wondering feels most at home. Some scholars believe population patterns in ancient Mesopotamia can be explained entirely through environment and administration. When climate stabilised, people stayed. When storage expanded, numbers grew. When scarcity returned, growth slowed. From this view, belief followed necessity. Gods explained systems already in place. Control remained human. Others suggest something more, intentional shaped behaviour. They point to the consistency of ritual calendars, the specificity of divine roles, the precision of astronomical alignment. Perhaps these were not merely reflections of survival, but instruments of guidance. If intimacy followed ritual timing, birth followed the sky. Regulation occurred without record of command. A few imagine a synthesis, environmental limits, social administration, and belief working together. No single force dominates. Balance emerges from interaction. Control is distributed. No one decides alone. The system evolves. Perhaps the most provocative question lingers gently. Did ancient people feel controlled at all? Or did they feel cared for? If guidance feels benevolent, does it count as control? The answer depends on perspective. When we examine tablets and myths, we see pattern, not motive. We see outcomes, not intention. Birth rates fluctuate, rituals intensify, architecture aligns. These facts coexist. Meaning remains open. Another question drifts into view. Why do similar patterns appear elsewhere? In Egypt, in the Indus Valley, in early China, different gods, different myths, yet similar concern with balance, with fertility regulated by ritual, with cosmic alignment shaping life. Some scholars believe this reflects shared human response to density. When populations grow, coordination becomes essential. Religion emerges naturally. Others wonder if knowledge travelled farther than assumed. Ideas migrating alongside trade. Patterns repeating because solutions repeat. Perhaps we may never know how conscious regulation truly was. We may never know how people felt internally. Archaeology offers structure, not emotion. The stars remain witnesses to our speculation. They watch those lives unfold. They watch us now asking questions. Their silence feels instructive, not dismissive, just patient. Another unanswered question rests softly. Why does the idea of external oversight persist across time? Why do humans repeatedly imagine watchers, guardians, stewards? Perhaps because uncertainty feels lighter when shared with something larger. Maybe the Anunnaki represent that impulse, not literal controllers, but symbols of balance desired, a way to express responsibility without burden. When outcomes exceed individual influence, belief absorbs weight. When we connect this to modern life, parallels emerge gently. Population today is counted precisely. Growth is debated, regulation discussed, authority questioned. The themes persist, only the language changes. Perhaps ancient myths still speak because they mirror enduring concerns. How many is too many? Who decides? What guides us when consequences feel delayed? We may never know whether ancient people believed the Anunnaki chose who could reproduce, but we can observe how belief shaped behaviour, and how behaviour shaped belief in return. Philosophically, this space matters. It allows humility. It reminds us that certainty is not required for understanding. Mystery can coexist with insight. As this section settles, we accept that questions may remain unanswered, and that is not failure, it is invitation. In the next movement, we will explore the value of that mystery itself, how uncertainty becomes legacy, and how these ancient questions continue travelling quietly through time, into us. When the questions grow quiet, the space around them becomes noticeable. There is no urgency here, no demand for conclusion, just a wide openness where thought can rest without pressure. When you imagine sitting with these unanswered ideas, your breathing slows naturally. The mind does not need to solve anything. It only needs to observe. Perhaps this is where ancient systems found their greatest strength. Not in answers, but in uncertainty. Mystery invites humility. When outcomes feel guided by forces beyond comprehension, people accept limits more easily. Control does not need enforcement when uncertainty softens resistance. Some scholars believe the Anunnaki functioned as symbolic placeholders, not literal overseers selecting who could reproduce, but narrative expressions of balance. When population fluctuated, stories explained why. When growth slowed, meaning absorbed disappointment. When growth increased, gratitude followed. The system remained stable because explanation existed even when clarity did not. Others suggest something subtler. That belief in oversight created self-regulation. When people assumed reproduction mattered beyond personal desire, they acted cautiously. Decisions slowed. Timing mattered. Responsibility widened. Population adjusted without instruction. Maybe both interpretations coexist. Humans are skilled at building systems that work precisely because they feel larger than human choice. When authority is externalized, conflict diminishes. Limits feel natural rather than imposed. When you examine ancient texts closely, the language rarely commands directly. It frames conditions, favour and disfavour, harmony and disruption, balance and excess. These are not legal categories. They are moral landscapes. People navigate them intuitively. Uncertainty plays key role here. If outcomes were predictable, belief would weaken. Mystery preserves reverence. When people cannot trace cause precisely, they hesitate before acting. That hesitation alone regulates behaviour. We may never know whether ancient leaders understood this consciously. Perhaps they sensed it intuitively, or perhaps the system evolved organically. Cultural practices that promoted stability survived. Others faded. The stars offer useful comparison. They guide without speaking. They repeat patterns without explaining them. Humans trust them precisely because they feel reliable and distant. Ancient belief systems mirror this quality. Authority feels vast, removed, consistent. Maybe this distance matters. When control feels too close, resentment grows. When it feels cosmic, acceptance follows. Population. Regulation framed as divine care rather than human management avoids conflict. Another unanswered question lingers gently. Did individuals ever resist quietly? Did some reject timing or ritual? Archaeology cannot hear private thought. It records structure, not dissent. Silence remains. Yet silence itself can regulate. When discussion feels unnecessary, compliance becomes default. People rarely question what feels eternal. Perhaps this is why later generations reinterpret ancient gods as literal beings. When systems outlive understanding, their symbolic origin fades. The Anunnaki become entities rather than ideas, overseers rather than metaphors. Control feels personalized. Modern minds often resist this ambiguity. We prefer clear categories, true or false, literal or symbolic. But ancient cultures often lived comfortably in between. Meaning mattered more than precision. This comfort with ambiguity may have been essential. It allowed systems to adapt without breaking when explanations are flexible behavior can adjust quietly. We may never know how population control truly functioned, whether reproduction was consciously limited by belief or simply influenced, whether priests noticed patterns or merely followed tradition, whether gods were imagined as managers or guardians. What we do know is that balance mattered deeply, enough to shape architecture, ritual, story, timekeeping, daily life. Population growth did not feel accidental. It felt meaningful. Perhaps meaning itself is the most powerful regulator. When actions feel significant, people act carefully. When consequences feel shared, they slow. When life feels observed, responsibility deepens. This observation does not require literal watchers. It requires belief in continuity, in memory, in consequence beyond the moment. When you consider modern parallels, the resonance is clear. We still debate growth, still track numbers, still seek guidance beyond individual desire. The language has changed. The concern remains. Maybe ancient systems understood something we often forget. That control works best when it feels like care. That limits are easier to accept when they feel purposeful. That mystery can be stabilizing. As this section settles, we allow uncertainty to remain. We do not rush to decide what the Anunnaki were, or how they functioned, or whether they existed beyond story. Instead, we notice how the idea itself operates, how it calms anxiety, how it frames responsibility, how it distributes weight across something larger than self. The stars continue shining without explanation. The earth continues responding patiently. Human questions continue forming. Perhaps the design was never to answer everything. Perhaps the system worked because it left space. Space for belief, space for doubt, space for balance to adjust. As we prepare to move forward, we carry this openness gently. Mystery does not weaken understanding. It deepens it. It reminds us that not all systems need clarity to function. In the next movement, we will turn toward legacy, toward how these ideas survived collapse, how memory carried them forward, how ancient questions travelled quietly into later worlds. Because even when structures fall, questions remain. When the city's quiet, the land does not empty all at once. Walls crumble slowly. Canals fill with silt patiently. Stone holds its shape longer than belief. When you imagine walking through these places after abandonment, there is no drama, only gradual release. Life withdraws without announcement. Long after temples stop receiving offerings, memory continues differently. Stories linger. Names soften. The Anunnaki do not vanish. They drift. They change shape. What once felt like oversight becomes ancestry. What once felt immediate becomes distant. Perhaps this is how belief survives collapse, not as system, but as echo. Oral tradition carries fragments forward. Elders tell stories of gods who kept balance, of times when numbers mattered, of ages when excess invited correction. The lessons remain even when context fades. Written records survive unevenly. Clay tablets endure where parchment fails. Buried intentionally or by accident, they wait patiently. Centuries pass. Empires rise and fall above them. Silence layers deeper. When modern archaeologists begin uncovering these records in the 19th century, the rediscovery feels quiet rather than triumphant. There is no single revelation. Understanding accumulates gradually, tablet by tablet, symbol by symbol. Scholars translate cautiously. Language resists precision. Words for gods overlap with words for authority. Terms for fate blur with administration. Interpretation remains open. Debate continues without urgency. Some researchers focus on economy and governance, others on religion and myth. A few notice how often population appears near divine reference. Not dramatic, not explicit, just consistent. Even now, new tablets emerge from storage rooms long overlooked. Museums hold collections not yet fully translated. Technology reveals markings previously invisible. Research continues gently. Still today, questions persist. Were the Anunnaki symbolic constructs legitimizing social order? Or did ancient people experience them as literal overseers? Or both at once? The record allows multiple readings. What remains striking is continuity of concern. Across millennia, humans ask similar questions. How many can we support? Who decides? What guides us when consequences feel delayed? Stars still appear in modern skies unchanged. The same constellations ancient priests watched now guide satellites and clocks. Cosmic time links eras seamlessly. Human interpretation changes, the sky remains. Perhaps this continuity explains why ancient ideas resurface repeatedly. They resonate because they speak to enduring uncertainty, control and freedom, growth and balance, responsibility shared or imposed. The Anunnaki survive not because of evidence alone, but because the idea remains useful. It provides language for discussing limits without assigning blame, oversight without accusation, balance without arithmetic. As modern societies debate population growth, similar patterns appear. Numbers tracked carefully, growth encouraged or discouraged, authority invoked, science replaces ritual, policy replaces myth. The structure feels familiar, yet something softer often goes missing: meaning. When regulation lacks narrative, resistance grows. Ancient systems wrapped limits in story, in cosmic context, in care. Perhaps this is why ancient beliefs feel strangely comforting even now. They frame limitation as protection, as stewardship, as alignment with the larger order. Archaeological rediscovery reconnects us with that framing, not to revive it literally, but to understand its function, to see how humans once lived with limits gracefully. We may never know exactly how population control operated, whether it was deliberate or emergent, whether gods were believed to choose who could reproduce or simply to oversee balance broadly. But we can see how memory preserved the idea, how collapse did not erase concern, how myth carried it forward quietly. Even today we inherit these questions unconsciously. We debate growth with language shaped by centuries of belief. We seek authority beyond self. We worry about balance. Stone still remembers. Tablets still speak softly. Stars still watch. The questions continue travelling. As this section closes, the legacy becomes clear. Not certainty, not proof, but continuity of wondering, of seeking balance in a complex world. In the final movement, we will return fully to the present, to stillness, to breath, to acceptance that some mysteries remain, and that this may be exactly as it should be, because memory does not demand resolution. It asks only to be held. The night you are in right now is very old. It belongs to no century. The air around you settles without instruction. Sound fades naturally. When you notice your breathing, it feels unhurried, unmeasured, free from counting. Nothing is required anymore. Long after cities fall, after records crumble, after names lose their edges, the earth continues its quiet work. Wind still moves across empty plains. Rivers still change course patiently. Stone still holds warmth from the sun long after light has gone. These processes do not remember belief. They remember time. When you imagine the ancient cities now, they are quiet places. Walls softened by erosion. Pathways filled with sand. Foundations still aligned beneath the surface. No voices remain to explain their purpose. Only shape. only silence, only endurance. Stars still hang above these ruins unchanged. The same constellations that once guided calendars now drift calmly overhead. They do not judge what was believed beneath them. They do not confirm or deny. They simply continue. Their patience is complete. Perhaps this is what balance ultimately returns to. Not control, not oversight, but stillness. The kind that arrives when questions are no longer pushed forward, when curiosity loosens its grip, when wonder becomes enough. You do not need to decide what the Anunnaki were, or whether they guided reproduction, or whether belief shaped behaviour deliberately or gently. Those answers can remain open. They do not need to close. When the mind stops searching, the body relaxes. Shoulders lower slightly, breath deepens. The quiet becomes friendly. There is nothing left to manage, nothing left to regulate. Long before humans imagined gods choosing outcomes, the universe already held balance, expansion and contraction, birth and fading, growth and rest. These cycles continue regardless of story. Stone remembers without emotion. It holds the imprint of footsteps long gone. It keeps foundations aligned even when meaning dissolves. Memory exists here without narrative, without interpretation. Silence settles over ruins at night. No ritual breaks it. No offering disturbs it. The stillness feels complete rather than empty, like something that has finished speaking. Perhaps ancient people sensed this too, that beyond all systems something quieter waits. Something that does not need explanation. Something that remains when belief changes. When you lie here listening, there is no need to hold concern. Population rises and falls. Civilizations form and dissolve. Questions emerge and fade. The larger rhythm continues untouched. The stars do not hurry. The earth does not rush. Time stretches gently. You're allowed to rest inside that patience. If any thoughts linger, they can drift without resolution. They do not need answers tonight. Wonder can exist without conclusion. Mystery can feel safe. Wind still moves over ancient foundations. It does not know their names. It does not care who built them. It smooths edges slowly. It hums softly. It continues. Perhaps this is the final lesson these ancient stories offer. That control is temporary. The balance returns naturally. That stillness waits beneath effort. Your breathing finds its own rhythm now, in and out. Nothing counted, nothing measured. Just presence. Stars continue watching as they always have. Stone continues remembering quietly. The night continues being wide and patient. And in this moment, there is nothing left to decide. Nothing left to understand. Nothing left to hold. Only the calm movement of time itself, slowly, gently, still drifting.